Hey guys, Krzysztof the Polish Geek, and welcome to another video, a ranking video of all 5 seasons of Stranger Things, from worst to best. And because pretty recently I reviewed season 5 of Stranger Things, so now that the show is complete, I decided to review all 5 seasons, from worst to best. So, number 5, the worst season of Stranger Things, and I'm so sad to say it, is season 5. And again, was it as insultingly bad as season 8 of Game of Thrones? No, and it did have some good moments that I genuinely enjoyed, and I can't say that I wasn't invested in the story, because I was. But admittedly, especially towards the end, that's when it got really predictable, lighthearted, annoying, and most importantly, there's just no tension whatsoever. Because the biggest thing that really annoys me, because season 4 was the darkest season, and that's when stakes felt really high, and you're thinking, wow, this is getting really dark, really scary, really intense, but I'm completely on board. But season 5 basically feels like chosen instead to go basically for a pretty predictable kids story, pretty much. Yep, that's how I describe season 5 in most positive way, especially that characters constantly get put in near-death situations and you're afraid that they're gonna get killed, only to get saved at the last moment. And it feels like the creators were literally teasing you, oh, we're gonna kill this person, we're gonna kill this, only to just save them. What? And because of that, it just feels like there's no tension whatsoever, and this is just really annoying. Like season 4 killed Eddie, season 3 killed the Russian guy, I don't remember his name, but season 3 killed the Russian guy, as well as Billy, the brother of Max, and season 1 killed Barbara. The show wasn't afraid to be taking risks before, but not season 5. Season 5 was probably the most underwhelming season of the entire show. And don't even get me started on the fact that the military story completely wasn't resolved. The fact that Dr. K, Linda Hamilton's character, faced no consequence for her actions, this was simply outrageous. But even without that, the biggest issue of season 5 is that it just feels like there is no tension whatsoever. It just feels like basically a very light-hearted kid's story, and pretty much it. Which very contrasted with previous seasons. So, again, there are some good moments in season 5, especially the ending, how the main characters are all playing Dungeons and Dragons. I think it's a pretty nice way to round up the whole story, especially the whole show revolves very much around Dungeons and Dragons, so just by the final scene, having the characters play D&D and then talk about the fates of each, I thought that was a pretty nice way to round up the story. So, I don't hate season 5, but I wouldn't say I loved or even like it either. The best way to say it, very disappointing. Again, not insultingly like Game of Thrones season 8, but very underwhelming and disappointing, and so lighthearted when it should be at its most dark and intense. Number 4, and that's season 2. And I can't say I don't like season 2, because I actually do like it a lot. There's a lot to love in season 2. Especially I love how it's a continuation of the story, and that's where things are starting to get more intense, and that's when the Mind Flayer actually gets introduced, and also Max gets introduced, and she's one of my favorite characters. So I do really like season 2 of Stranger Things. I like how it very much builds on the story of season 1 and all, but in many ways it does feel like a setup, pretty much. From a pure objective standpoint, I wouldn't say that a lot is happening in season 2, and there are moments where it drags, kind of, but overall, I do think season 2 is really good, but I would say it's much more of a setup, whereas season 3 and 4, that's when it's more of a payoff, actually. So yeah, season 2 of Stranger Things, I do like it quite a lot, and I do like how it very much expands upon the story of season 1 and pretty much sets up what's later to come, but overall I think it's a setup and it drags at some moments actually, and it does kinda get boring sometimes, so that's why season 2 at number 4. I still love season 2 quite a lot, but it's nowhere near as good as the following seasons. Coming in number 3, and that might be one of my hottest takes on this channel because this is gonna be pretty controversial, but coming in number 3 is lots of people's favorite, Season 1. So, Season 1 is the favorite season of a lot of people, and now especially after the disappointing finale, plenty of people are actually saying that this is where the show would end, and yes, even before Season 4 actually, that's also where plenty of people were saying that the show should just end after Season 1, which I understand where they're coming from, but I do disagree with that. The first thing we gotta say is yes, objectively, it does kind of work very well as its own self-contained story, because the way it ends, it's kind of like it's over, and it doesn't really end on a cliffhanger. It kind of ends like it's over, and there is no need for any more story. Like the story is told. Yep, it does pretty much feel like that, and understandably, that's why plenty of people do actually find Season 1 as the best, and then no point in seasons later. But the reason I strongly disagree is because, again, I do actually much prefer Season 3 and 4, and I will get to it soon actually, and that's why I disagree with the statement that it should end after Season 1, but at the same time, retroactively, after how the show ended, I don't blame that people feel that way. Honestly, I would actually prefer if we just had Season 1 alone without later seasons, because Season 3 and 4 do kind of feel like a disappointment now, retroactively, after what a disappointment Season 5 was, but ultimately, that's ultimately a different story, and we're not talking about the show as a whole, we're talking about each individual season. So yes, retroactively, it would probably be much better if Season 1 was the only season, and that's when the show ended afterwards, but again, that's ultimately a different story. But what I love about Season 1 is how it introduces us to the world of Stranger Things, and plenty of people, as the show first came out, was that the show is very nostalgic and makes you feel like you're back in the 80s, and I wasn't born in the 80s, I was born in the 90s, so you can't really say I have nostalgia for the 80s, but that's always what I loved about Stranger Things. So even though you're not born in the 80s, even if you weren't born in the 80s like I wasn't, but the show still manages to make you feel very much nostalgic for the 80s, and that's what I always loved so much about Stranger Things. And because the first season is the first season, that's where you actually feel most of it, actually. And I also really like the story and how it introduces all the characters and all in the mystery, and how Will Byers goes missing and all that, and there is plenty of tension, and it's really interesting, and the whole story is very engaging, and you care about the characters and what happens to them, and you just want to know what next, and when the story is going in direction is really good. So yes, it's very understandable why plenty of people find Season 1 as still the best season, and in many ways it's also the most small-scale season, which, again, can sometimes work in the story's favor, because sometimes when you try to basically expand the story, it can go overboard and you then don't know what to do with the story. But that's the most important thing about Season 1. It tells a story, it clearly knows what it wants to be and what it wants to do, and as a result, it tells a really good and engaging, self-contained story, kind of a science fiction story with some horror elements, and that's what makes the Season 1 so good, actually. And again, plenty of people say that's where the show should end, really. And even though I prefer the following 2 seasons that you're about to see, retroactively I probably have to agree. Like, because the ending was so disappointing, objectively, it would probably be best if the show just ended after Season 1. I mean, we wouldn't then get the following 2 seasons, but honestly, again, the ending was so disappointing that I don't think that my number 2 and 1 were really worth the disappointing finale that we got. So, overall, but as a season and my enjoyment of the season, Season 1 of Stranger Things goes to number 3. And number 2 is Season 3. And yes, I've seen plenty of people not liking Season 3, but I always was probably the minority, but I always found Season 3, before Season 4 came out, I always found Season 3 as the best season. And the reason was that I just really liked the story and how engaging it was and all that, and I also like how Mind Flayer was now making his entrance and attacking Hawkins, plus combine that with some really scary horror elements of basically manipulating the people of Hawkins and basically putting them under his control, and it was all some really creepy and interesting and scary stuff and really intense. I really loved that, and I also love how it introduced the Soviet storyline into the story. And also one of the Russians was this basically like Terminator guy, really cool villain, possibly even the scariest villain of Stranger Things, probably even scarier than the Mind Flayer, which says a lot. But yeah, like basically this Russian Terminator like guy, he was really cool and awesome. And also the final battle in the mall with the Mind Flayer, or more like the spider monster, since it wasn't an actual real Mind Flayer, was so awesome and intense. And also the brother of Max, Billy, dying, there was a really sad and emotional moment. Like, yeah, he was a real jerk throughout the story and all, and yet the story made an excellent job at actually making you very sad when he dies, which I think it speaks to some really good writing and shows how the writers clearly had better ideas back then than they had now. But yep, plenty of people found season 3 the worst back in the day when it came out. But again, I never could ever disagree more. Again, I really found it creepy and intimidating with how Mind Flayer was controlling the Hawkins population, and I also loved, again, and I really loved the introduction of the Soviet storyline as well as the Terminator-like guy. And again, the death of Billy was really sad and emotional, even if he was kind of a real jerk before that, but it still doesn't change the fact. But the season made still a really excellent job at actually making you feel sad and sorry for him. So yes, overall, plenty of people find season 3 of Stranger Things as one of the worst. But again, I was always in the minority, but I always found season 3 as among the best. So yeah, season 3 was even my favorite actually, until my number 1, which is season 4. But now, admittedly, talking about it and analyzing it after a really disappointing finale is kinda sad and depressing, but before season 5 came out, season 4 was really my favorite, and that's why I was so excited for season 5, because season 4 that's where the stakes feel at its most high, that's where the tension is the biggest, which again further shows how disappointing season 5 was when there was no tension whatsoever, because again, in contrast to season 5, in season 4 there was constant tension. Like, the show wasn't afraid to actually be killing off characters, and even though most of them were like freshly introduced characters which we didn't know much about, it still didn't change the fact of how actually intense things were becoming, especially how they were seeing this clock, and then which meant that they were gonna die in like 24 hours, which they didn't know, and we as the viewers initially didn't actually know either. But that was some really creepy and disturbing stuff. Like, this is basically Stranger Things at its most creepy and scary, but I really loved that, as well as the death of Eddie was really emotional, and I also loved Hopper actually being in Siberia in the Soviet prison. Like, that was also really interesting, and also Vecna I thought was a really amazing villain. I mean, pretty disappointing in season 5, but in season 4 he was really amazing and really intense, and he truly felt like a threat. And overall, I also did like the reintroduction of Dr. Brenner, and as well as learning a lot more about the backstory of the experiments and 11 and all that, and that was all really fascinating and interesting. And as I said, this was literally the scariest season of the entire show, and the most intense one, with the stakes at their highest, and like, you truly cared about what happens to characters, and you were so worried about them, because that's how intense things were getting. So yeah, season 4 of Stranger Things, ultimately, I still think it's my favorite season, even if I did admittedly kinda got ruined by the really underwhelming season 5, but again, before season 5 came out, season 4 was easily my favorite of the whole show. And again, that's where things were at their scariest and most creepy and most intense, and the stakes felt the highest. And again, I also loved the Russian storyline of Hopper in Siberian prison. Like, that was really interesting. And the introduction of Vecna, yep, again, which makes season 4 of Stranger Things my absolute favorite, even if again the underwhelming season 5 did suddenly retroactively kinda ruined it for me. But again, before season 5, I was very much firm that season 4 was the best. So here is my ranking of all 5 seasons of Stranger Things. What is your ranking of all seasons of Stranger Things? Do you agree with my ranking? Do you disagree? What is yours? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for checking out this video. Press the like button, please subscribe this channel, and I will talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you later. Bye.